next speaker for today is Claudia Stöcker. She is going to be talking on tools for identifying the challenges of tenure security on different scales. A really quick brief on Claudia. She's a research associate at the University of Münster and a PhD candidate at ITC University of Twente in the Netherlands. Her research expertise includes land administration, photogrammetry, unmanned aerial vehicles and remote sensing, as well as community mapping. Since 2020, she joined the SmartLandMaps team at the University of Münster to exploit and implement approaches and tools facilitating the automatic digitization of sketch maps to document formal and informal land rights. Claudia has done substantial fieldwork in East Africa in collaboration with national authorities, local SMEs, donors, and NGOs. Without further ado, Claudia, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, and welcome everyone. I'm really glad to get the opportunity to speak to you today about some tools to identify challenges of tenure security on different scales. And in the next 20 minutes, I will mainly spend most of the time for showing you some tools that are available for free use. But I will start off with some definitions to get us all on the same page and wrap up with a short conclusion. So land tenure, as defined by the FAO in 2002, is the legal or customarily defined relationship among people with respect to land. So this can be individuals or groups of people. And it includes the full range of social relationships between people and communities with regard to accessing, possessing, controlling, and transferring land and natural resources. On the other hand, land tenure security is the certainty that an individual's or community's right to land will be recognized by others and protected in case of specific challenges. And I think especially the last one, the protection of the land right, is of particular importance. So when we look at the sphere of tenure security, we see that there are basically two different themes. One is the perceived tenure security, and the other one is the legal tenure security. And the difference between those two is that the perceived tenure security is a measure of how individuals feel about the security of their land rights, whereas legal tenure security is more about the legal and the law that can protect land rights, so more the governance side. And why does all this matter? Well, I think there's a huge consensus that land tenure security is really a critical foundation for many things, including investments, prosperity, environmental protection, and resilience, social security, among others. And with secure rights and tenure security, individuals and communities, so without those secure rights, they cannot use land productively and sustainable. And I think we are all aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and particularly the first goal with indicator 1.4, that access to land is crucial to ending poverty, and access to land is inherently governed through land tenure systems. So this is a bit to set the scene before I will now show you a few examples how to measure tenure security. So we can distinguish between different levels and different scales, and depending on the methodology, you have either individual level, or you can measure at the tenure system level, or at a country level, or even a global level. And data can be drawn, for instance, from published works from researchers or organizations such as the UN and the World Bank, then you can also do your own data collection, asking people and groups that are holding land rights about their probably more about the perceived tenure security that they feel. And on the other hand, you can also ask land professionals and experts dealing with land rights in a particular context to get an idea about processes and workflows. And last but not least, you can also review existing procedures from an external perspective to assess the effectiveness of certain procedures. And some tools do combine those data collection measurements, and others only use one. And I think it's really mainly depending on the aim that you would like to have and the outcome that you want to see to decide on a certain data collection method. And in the next few minutes, I would like to quickly introduce the following tools to you. So Prindex, the FELA, and the Land Governance Assessment Framework, the Landmark Map, and the Doing Business report from the World Bank. And I will start with that. So the Doing Business report is a website maintained by the World Bank, and it scores different aspects of doing business in a specific country. So it includes different categories, and one of those is the registering property category. And there are particularly 5 dimensions outlined for land administration that are important if you want to get an idea about the land tenure security at a country level. And those 5 dimensions include the reliability of infrastructure, the transparency of information, the geographic coverage, land dispute resolution, and equal access to property rights. So they have a set of different questions that you can also see them on their website. And then they put a score on these particular dimensions. And it looks like this here. So I put a screenshot here of the website. And the nice thing is that you can download this data either in an XLS format or in a PDF format to work with the data. And you have country profiles, or you also have aggregated regions. And now the next slide shows an example of this data. And for instance, here I downloaded the score to register property, aggregated to different regions, and compare the data from 2019 and 2020 for all the different regions. And so 0 is the lowest score and 100 is the highest score. And what we see here is nicely that most regions really enhanced in their registering property score and had a positive development in that regard. And of course, now when you want to dive further into the reasons for this better score, you can dig into the different dimensions that I just mentioned. And another example, more in a spatial representation of the data, is here the conflict resolution index, which is again a country level index, and a score from 0 to 8, as shown here in the legend below, whereas 0 is very poor and 8 is the highest number. And this land dispute resolution index assesses the legal framework for immovable property registration and the accessibility of dispute resolution mechanisms. So it's also quite interesting to see this global overview about this issue. However, unfortunately, this tool will stop operating as it was announced a few months ago due to data irregularities in the annual report in 2018 and 2020. So this is really sad because I also used it for my own research a few years ago, and I really like this to get this global picture and this global overview of a current state. However, we also have another nice global overview tool from Prindex, which provides a global database of individuals' perceived tenure security. So this is really about the perception at the individual level. And they disaggregated their data by sex and tenure type. And the really nice thing is that they did a really great job in collecting data that is comparable from 140 countries out of 200 countries of the world. So it's a massive data that they did, data collection, and it's really great to work with that and to look into this. And they publish annual reports with a global scale, but also regional reports. And their methodology is based on a global survey where they have nationally representative samples of around 1,000 people in each of those 140 countries. And the unique thing is really that they have a consistent and uniform set of survey instruments to ensure that the data collected from different countries can be compared to each other. Because with other tools, this is sometimes a problem when you have different data collection methods, then there's always a certain bias. And Prindex really tries to eradicate these biases. And they collected this data face-to-face or via telephone interviews in 2018 and 2019. And their heading question is that, now I quote, so in the next 5 years, how likely or unlikely is it that you lose the right to use this property or part of your property against your will? And then they define security if the respondent answers, oh, it is unlikely or very unlikely that they could lose the right to use the land, or they measure insecurity if the respondent answers that it's somewhat likely or very likely that they could lose the right to use the land. So this is a bit an insight on their methodology that they are using. And when we look into their annual report, which is also publicly available, come to a conclusion that 1 billion people fear eviction worldwide. So this is 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6 people, which is quite a number. And this is really a number that is proven by empirical data. So it's really a proper scientific statistic behind this estimate. And but they don't only collect data on the perception of tenure security. They also have some more questions further into the details of tenure systems. And to give you one other example is that now they distinguish between the experience of renters towards the experience of owners. And their figures say that the renters experience much more tenure insecurity than owners. And this was also, when I read their report, this was very new to me, because there was no other publication available who tackled this issue of renters. And I really find the numbers speaking out loud on their own. So I really like this database. And another very interesting platform focusing on indigenous and community lands is the Landmark. Also providing a web GIS displaying georeferenced information on collectively held and used lands worldwide. And this is a platform that does not collect data on their own, but they do data mining. So they have trusted organizations where they request the data to be put on their single global platform. So again, on the methodology side, here we have publicly available maps and data, as well as information from individuals or organizations. And they are also continuously seeking new data and data to update their database to also fill gaps in their coverage. And at the scale level, so we have both national but also subnational level data, which is approximately updated once per year. And this looks like that. So this is now again a screenshot from their WebGIS application. And what we see here is a score, an average score of the legal security of indigenous land. And so the green score is that the law addresses the issue of indigenous land fully, so it's good, it's green. And a higher score, the 3 to 4, is that the law does not address the issue of indigenous land. So when you are looking more into community and indigenous lands, the landmark map is really a great tool to get an idea of the tenure security of community and indigenous lands. So now we come to tools that do not work at a global scale, but are more focused on specific countries. And this is first of all the Land Governance Assessment Framework, which is a tool developed by the World Bank Group. And it's a diagnostic instrument to assess the state of land governance. And the World Bank used this tool to write country reports and to also target their funding and their projects towards specific challenges that they identified with these country reports of the Land Governance Assessment Framework. And they've been very active on this tool between 2010 and 2016. And there are country reports available for 39 countries worldwide. And that can be accessed on their webpage. And so the methodology on this tool is more on the expert level. So they have local experts in the countries and they rate the quality of a certain governance structure along a comprehensive set of dimensions. So again, to make it comparable, it's a pre-coded framework based on the vast experience the World Bank has at a global level. And the key areas are, for instance, management of public land, also again, the dispute resolution management. Then also a dimension, a key area of large-scale acquisitions, and also on land use planning and management. So how does this look like? You have different areas, different indicators, different dimensions. And it's a huge list of those dimensions. I think they have in total 117 dimensions. And the goal is to get a score for each of those dimensions. So score A, B, C, or D, with A being very good practice and D being a very weak practice. And the aim of the panel of local experts is that they can vote and to find a consensus on this score for a certain dimension. And the ranking needs to be justified by evidence. And there's also a kind of iterative process to validate these results in workshops. And this is just an example how this could look like from different states and different dimensions. So you could easily see, well, where there are these, there are huge problems. And then you can target this specific challenge in a certain country. And now I need to speed up a bit, I'm afraid. This is the last tool now that I'm presenting, the FELA, the Framework for Effective Land Administration. Also the newest tool available, which is a kind of overarching policy guide prepared by the UNGGIM expert group on land administration and management. And it provides guidance and reference for countries that want to develop or reshape existing land administration systems. So it's so far not really being used to assess different country states. So as we saw in the other tools, but it's more a framework which has 7 strategic pathways to be followed when developing, renewing, strengthening, or modernizing land administration systems. So when you go into a country, you can have the FELA as a framework at hand, and then you can do a gaps assessment, or you can even do project design work. And as it's only being endorsed last year by UNGGIM, the implementation tools and methods remain ongoing work. So it's really worth to have a look at this in the coming months. And there are also some publications of this available already. And now to conclude, I think information on tenure security and respective challenges is really crucial to policy device, to academia, and also to target projects towards really existing challenges on the ground. And there are tools at different scales available with, again, also different focus areas. And probably the best practice is to look at a combination of those tools and trying to get the most of the information that is available online and freely accessible for everyone. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to receive your questions. Thank you.
Hi, Claudia. Thank you so much. We're just going to wait to see if anybody posts any questions, and then you'd be free to go and we'd be on to our dance party. Please leave your questions in the comment section or the chat box if you'd have any. You have a question, Claudia?
Oh yeah, I see, right.
Okay. Is anything being done to collect data in locations where there is none? And could VCSP help there?
Oh, that's a good question. And I have to say that I'm probably not too much into the data to know about work which is being done to close the gaps, but I think these tools are already being used to guide project implementation work. So if there is a lack of certain structures or a lack of data, I'm sure that there are endeavors to close these gaps. But I'm also quite sure that there will never be enough work, or there is enough work also for the VCSP to help out there and to have a look at those places where there's nothing being done. And maybe it might be interesting to do an overlay of different data which is available through the tools and really identifying those gaps. Does this answer your question a bit, Aaron?
It was great. I'm sure it did. We have another question from Claire. Not so much a question as more of an extension. Do you want to touch a bit more on smart maps?
Yeah, so maybe just briefly on SmartLandMaps. So also you're really invited to follow our Twitter account. With SmartLandMaps, we are having a research project currently going on to automate the digitization of sketch maps. So in a lot of places, you do community mapping and grassroots mapping. And then you have the problem, okay, what to do with those maps? And I'm sure it's very tedious to digitize all this on screen. And with SmartLandMaps, we are trying to learn a convolutional network. So we use machine learning to extract those sketches from the maps and automatically georeference this data back to a shapefile so that you can use it in any GIS. And I'm really looking forward to do some pilot tests, and we are still looking also for partners and projects that are working with sketch maps, so where people draw on aerial photography or drone photography, and with whom we can pilot our tools. So I'm really, please send me a message either through the chat or on LinkedIn or via email. If you have procedures in place to do sketch mapping, and we would be really happy to get in touch. Maybe we could even do one short pilot study or a workshop with the VCSP one day.
Thank you, Claudia. SmartLandMaps sound amazing. I think I'm going to be following it as soon as possible, and so will everybody on this presentation. It's really cool, actually. So we're done for the session, but before I go, I'd like to announce that we're using the hashtag VCSP December 2021 WW, which is short for Wisdom Workshop. If any of you would like to post anything on your LinkedIn, Twitter, or any other social media you like.